Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Oner podcast, the podcast where we review and break down films all in one big, long, unbroken take. I'm Austin Archer, and with me, as always, is my childhood next-door neighbor and lifelong best friend,
Cramer, England.
Okay, I'm in Sandy, and I look like I'm being filmed on a potato even more than I normally do, and I have a really blown out kind of lighting setup right now, which I think is appropriate for the movie we're talking about.
It is. You just need to be more blue. That's
Yeah,
you. You need to be more. You're a little too saturated with color. You need to be very blue and washed
yep.
out.
But the lighting kind of blowing me out is
Yep,
is is
it is
good.
very appropriate. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I watched this movie last night on DVD. I
Ooh,
yeah, it felt really like a throwback night. Like I was like,
I can't remember
if you
if
have
I
it
had
up
it
there.
on DVD, but I don't. No, it's not there. I should. My parents had it. Yeah, I
Anyway,
don't have it.
today we are talking about, what is it? 2002? Is that when this movie came?
2002. Yes, 2002.
2002's Minority Report, directed by the great Steven Spielberg and
Yes.
starring the great Tom Cruise.
Yep.
Um and as well as many others, with like a little like baby Colin Farrell, where it's like, is this when
Yeah.
Colin Farrell showed the world that he was a
Yeah.
movie star?
This, I think,
Uh
was his presentation to the world, like, "Here I am." I know that he
yeah,
was in movies and stuff before this, but this was his role. Like, this was the
yeah,
role, and I remember all of us when, and I think Jeff had the biggest man crush on on,
yeah.
Colin Farrell, but this was the movie that really, like, put him on the map, and he's great in this movie.
He
I love
steals
him.
every scene
Oh, he
he's in.
does.
When I was
Totally.
watching it this time, I was like, dude, Colin
Yeah.
Farrell, like, what a, like, coming in, talk about like a role that could just be like, yeah, it's fine. But
Yeah,
he
yeah,
comes in and he's just like going toe to toe with Cruise, like, I
yeah.
dare you. Like,
Oh, yeah, yeah, and he's
yeah.
such a great antagonist.
But
Yeah,
also,
he's
he's
awesome.
the only guy who's right.
Yeah,
Like,
he is.
it's so, I love the way that this movie sets him up as like the
Oh,
villain
yes.
character, but he's not at all the
No.
villain.
No, he's
Yeah.
not. I mean, like, his intentions as you see it after everything happens, you
Mhm.
see his intentions, and then when he does finally get it, you're totally on his side, which is crazy. It's really
Yeah.
only, like, 2 scenes that he's in after he gets it, but, like, you can tell that he's questioning it, and then he's like you're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, he's been framed, like, he's been framed. Come on, Colin, do it. You can do it." And then,
Well,
it all happens, but
and that's why this movie has always been, it's one I've come back to time and time again
yes.
over the years.
Yeah.
This was my first time watching this in what feels like maybe 5 to 10 years. It's
Okay.
been a
Yeah,
while since
yeah.
I've revisited this,
Mhm.
but it is a nice movie to revisit, and it is like I have a different experience with his character,
Yeah.
knowing the movie the way I do from the start, from the outset. I'm like, I agree with everything this guy's saying. That like
Yeah.
obviously this system should be questioned, and
Yeah.
obviously it should be it
Yes.
should be looked into. Spoiler alerts for Minority
Yeah.
Report. If you've somehow never seen it, what are
Yeah.
you doing? Go
Yeah.
watch
Go
Minority
watch it.
Report.
Stop
It's
and go watch it right now. It's worth it for sure.
it's Philip K. Dick, dude.
Yeah.
It's like like,
Yeah. It's Steven Spielberg. It's Scott Frank. Like
yeah.
this amazing trio, and I mean everybody else. I can never remember his DP's name. His last name's Kaminsky, Yansu Kaminsky or something like that. He's amazing. It just looks amazing. The
Well,
editing
so
by Michael Kahn is awesome. Everything is just top notch. Production design, everything.
okay, before we start doing our plot breakdown, that's the first thing I want to talk about
Okay.
is the cinematography for this
Oh
movie.
yes,
So we talked about how my blown out light and
yes.
stuff, especially last night. I kept thinking, like, because I watched it with my brother. I watched it at Anthony's house with my
Okay.
niece and nephew. It was their first time seeing it, so that
Nice.
was kind of fun.
That's always
Uh,
fun. Yes.
my nephew's like 11 and my niece is like 13, and it's
Okay.
like, I'm like, that's around how
Yeah.
old we were when we saw this in
Yeah.
theaters,
It's about that. Yeah.
and but I kept thinking, like, is Anthony's TV, like, is it
Something wrong
making
with
this,
it?
is it
Yeah.
like, because I'm like, I know that this movie is, I know that it does have a very, like, specific color grading and specific
Yes.
saturation, but I was like, this feels extra. But then I was like, it's on DVD though. Like, it's
Yeah.
not like
Yeah.
whatever streamer is maybe having like a lag. Like, this is the
Yeah.
DVD. Like,
No.
this is,
It,
you know,
and so this movie, I love this movie. It's one of my favorite movies, very influential on me
mhm.
as, in my taste in filmmaking. And I would watch, once we got the DVD of this, I watched all the special features and
Yeah.
everything, which were amazing. And one of the things Steven Spielberg said to his DP, he's like, he went and
Can you
he's
make
like,
it the
okay,
ugliest movie
yeah,
ever made? Yeah,
that's what he said.
yeah,
He said, I
straight
want
up.
this to be the dirtiest, ugliest movie I've ever made.
Yeah.
And
And it
they're like,
is.
okay. So they did a bleach bypass, which makes everything blown out and
Mhm.
totally desaturated. And they used a certain film stock that made it way grainy. Like you can see the grain in like everything, which makes
Did
it
they
look
shoot this
so
on
good.
film?
Oh yeah, Spielberg only shoots on film.
Oh, I was certain that this I literally
No,
said to my niece and nephew last night, I was like, "I'm pretty sure this was, like, one of the first features to be shot on
nope.
digital." And
No, Spielberg is totally anti-digital. Not like he
whoa.
is he is all film all the time. He just and which
Wow.
I love because I mean inherently film just looks better than digital. Digital's
But
great
this
now.
but
It's totally fine if you want to shoot digital, but like
but
this he is all about film.
the color grading of this film makes it look like early 2000s digital film, like,
Kind of.
because
Yeah.
of all the, like it looks like there's
It
filters on it. It
it
looks like
kind of
they
yeah, it
it
kind of
looks like they
does.
put, like, an Instagram filter over the entire movie that's like,
Right.
like
Yeah.
but,
But
here's
it also looks very old. It looks
yeah,
like a 40s noir or like a
yeah.
30s noir movie, which is what they were going for. But yeah, the color grading is what pushed it to make it look more modern and probably a little more digital.
Well, so
They do use some
I was totally wrong. I was, like, telling my niece and nephew, I was like, "Oh, well, this is, like, one of the first movies that was shot digitally," so
yeah,
they had
no,
to, but I was like, "They're trying to, like, emulate film grain by putting on this."
no.
I was totally wrong.
It was film,
Yeah.
yeah. He talks about it. Yeah, he's all film. Spielberg
Wow.
is, but yeah,
I what I like about it is
yeah,
that it feels simultaneously futuristic and, like, ugly and bad. But
yeah,
that's what I actually really like this vision of the future of
me too.
2054.
Yeah.
I like because I even think that I hear a lot of commentary, right now of people talking about how, yeah, we're getting more future things like artificial intelligence, and we're getting all
Mhm.
these like more future tech. We're getting
Yeah.
electric cars and we're getting, but it somehow feels like worse. It feels like even though it's maybe more futuristic, a lot of elements of it are, it's like a car where
Yeah.
everything's on a screen and everything's on one screen. And it's like, ooh, cool, future. But then
Yeah.
it's like, okay, but if my one screen goes down, all of my buttons on my car don't work.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
so it's like,
Exactly,
I don't know if
exactly.
that's better than,
Yeah.
or like AC that I have to adjust on the screen and I can't do it
So
without look.
annoying.
Yeah, and it's
I
like I have
know. Takes my
to
eyes off
look
the road.
right. And it's like instead of something that's intuitive, like I know where the AC fan is, I can grab it with my hand without looking
Yeah.
and I can
Yeah.
point it at myself. Like these more analog things that are like, yeah, I guess this new thing is like, ooh, touchscreen, cool.
Yeah.
But then it's got these, and I think that's in this movie from the jump, this sort of mixture of like neato future, but then it's also like, but is it good?
Yeah.
That,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, and this is one of the things that I love about this movie as well. It's a futuristic movie, but you're not focusing too much on the tech. I mean, it's there and you see
Mhm.
it, but it's not like, look at how amazing this is, like flying cars, like,
Yeah.
and it's also the clothes are pretty much like, if you look at clothes, they're not, you look at this and then you look at Demolition Man, you know,
Sure.
and
Right.
Demolition Man is like, oh, they've got all these funky, weird clothes, and they've got,
Yeah.
and even Back to the Future Part Two, it's like it's the year 2015,
Right.
It's
Right.
like that's not even close to what
Yeah.
2015 was like. So Spielberg, he got a bunch of scientists and architects and like a bunch of people all together for 3 days, took them to a hotel and had a 3 day like retreat, like a think tank. And he's like,
Mhm.
tell me what the future is going to be like. He's like, I want it to feel real. And they just thought about all the different stuff that could possibly happen. And I mean, it's not exactly how it's turned out, but we're moving that way. Like there's a guy reading a newspaper and it's like, okay, newspapers aren't really here, but you're going to have a tablet and they're scanning your eyes and they're telling you like, oh, hey, John Anderton, how's those, how you need some
Well,
Aquafina, and
eh,
it's like totally
and
towards you specifically.
we have eye scanning technology in our
Yeah.
tablets right now.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things in this movie where it's like Hollywood has this problem of like not projecting future movies into the future far enough. You know, you
Yeah,
just brought
yeah,
up Back to the Future 2, where it's like that was a very ambitious
yeah,
idea of what,
yeah,
30
yeah.
years from 1985
And
would look
I think it
like.
was part of a joke, like, it was kind of a jo
Totally.
but it yes, yes.
Totally. But here it's like this movie came out in 2002 and they're
Yeah,
projecting 52 years into the future
yeah,
from where when they made it. And a lot of the stuff that shows up in this movie already exists in
yes.
2025. So my niece and nephew even last night were kind of like, "Oh, I'm sure that it's going to look like that in 2054." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm like, maybe we won't have the magnetic highways
Yeah, yeah,
with the magnetic
yeah,
cars. Who knows?" But like when he's just like jogging through a town and there's just
yeah,
screens everywhere with
yeah,
ads everywhere,
yeah,
that stuff, like if you like that's like go to New York City. Like
yeah,
that's what
yeah,
increasingly, and on our world of screens everywhere, never-ending screens. I
yeah,
look at the
yeah,
small screen, I look at the medium screen, I look
yeah,
at the big screen. They're already tracking my eyeballs.
yeah.
They're listening to our conversations. When I say
Mhm.
I'm interested in something, I see an ad for it.
I
15
know.
minutes later,
So
they
weird.
are, they're tapped into what we're doing.
Yeah,
And so a lot of this stuff, whether or not like for instance, he makes a video call to Lamar at one point in the movie,
yeah,
and it's on a Nokia video
yeah, yeah,
phone. And
yeah, yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, swing and a miss there. But like,
Yeah, yeah,
but it's like, I don't know. Also, I don't know. In our nostalgia based world, I could
yeah,
see like in 10 years, like companies coming
yeah,
back
yeah,
as like,
yeah,
remember this company? They're back. Like
yeah,
Nokia is like like Nokia takes over
yeah,
the
yeah,
telecommunications
yeah,
sector randomly, and all of a sudden
yeah,
it's like, man, we're all back to Nokia.
yeah, yeah.
I don't
It
know.
yeah, it's very much tangible. Everything
Mhm.
that's in this movie is very tangible, which makes it so much more grounded. Like, it's a
Yeah.
future movie. There's still some future stuff that, but it's like they have some of them have tablets. They have these, like, see-through screens, which is a little bit more cinematic than practical, but that's what makes it interesting. But, you see a lot of this stuff, like you said, the eye scanning. If I talk about trying to get like a Easton bat, for baseball.
Mhm. Mhm.
I'm gonna go look on the internet and it's gonna be, hey, Easton bats for baseball. And it's like, what the? And that's what you're seeing in this movie. They are
Yeah.
targeting you for ads. They're
Yeah.
targeting you to try and sell you something, right? And
And
that's
we already live
and
in that world. Yeah.
yeah, and the best one of the greatest things about this movie is the theme, which runs throughout all of it is choice and predetermination
Yep.
and all those different things of free will and
Yep.
the morality of those things because you're getting scanned everywhere. Wherever you go, you get eye scanned, and it's like, okay, do you have any privacy? Like, and how can they use that against you? How do they use it to track you? He's in a maglev car, and they can stop his car, and then they can pull it over, and I mean, all these things are great, and so but it
Yeah.
questions the morality of all this, which is so great.
Well, and I mean, I have a friend who was on jury duty for a murder case a few years ago, and he told me
Interesting.
all about it afterward because once it was done, he was like, it's so fascinating watching like they had every angle of this
Hmm.
night on camera. They had the guy coming down the elevator in the apartment building he was in. They had the lobby camera of him leaving. They
Yeah.
had CCTV of him leaving the building. They had CCTV of him rounding the corner of the block. The only angle they didn't have was this alleyway where the murder took place. So it's the
Oh wow.
only angle they couldn't find. And guess where they found it?
I don't know. Somebody's
They
phone.
they found it on a Tesla cam of a car that drove by,
No
and
way.
they were able to pick up a few frames, key frames that corroborated the story that the
Wow.
defense was telling. And
Wow.
I was like, "That's so it's just like they have every angle of it."
That's insane.
That's
Yep.
so crazy. And so, yeah, there's a lot about this film that is not just plausible, but we already hit it. Like
Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
already there. And again, whether or not it's gonna work out in the
Yeah.
exact way that it's shown in this movie is kind of immaterial. I don't think
Yes.
that these predictions are like bad predictions at all.
No, no.
And I think that a lot of them have already worked out. Probably the
Yeah.
most, high concept thing is the idea of a futuristic drug that
Yes.
when you take it, you have kids and your kids are X-Men, and
Yeah.
that
Yeah, that's the most
yeah,
far-fetched.
that's
But
the most far-fetched
that's
thing, yeah.
where the fiction comes in, the
Sure.
science fiction, you know? Yeah,
Right,
it's
right.
totally
But
but
it's
and
also that's where it's like, "Hey, just go with us on this,"
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah, and I
Yeah,
can make that
you know?
jump because that's
Sure.
the part that's like, this is not real, but everything
No.
else is you can feel it, so it makes it feel more real. The
Yeah.
precogs, which oh, man, the precogs are again, bringing up the morality, these people can see the future and they can predict murders, but, like, what are we doing to them? Like,
Oh,
they're
yeah.
they're not humans, like,
Yeah.
they're
Well,
and
and again,
even Tom Cruise, which it goes in, he's like, "It's better not to think of them as humans." And
yeah.
then on his journey, he realizes you are a human. Like, you what are we doing to these people?
Well, and again, that's the whole there's a thing in here, in this whole movie of, like, more futuristic, but worse maybe?
Yeah,
That thing,
yeah,
I really like so you were talking about, like, the see-through screens, like, these, like,
yes, yeah,
this exists in, like, the movie Looper too, where they have phones that are just, like it's like a little glass panel,
yeah,
and I like this idea because it's sort of like the escalation of, like, what's the up but in
mhm,
2002, iPhones didn't exist.
exactly.
So
Yep,
there so th I remember the first time that touchscreen tablets came out in around 2007, and a
yeah,
lot of people would say this feels like Minority Report
yeah,
when
yeah, yeah,
Tom
yeah,
Cruise is using his hands to sort of move things,
yeah,
even though we were using a touchscreen tablet.
yep,
But uh, the escalation of like, okay, well, my phone's like this thick, and it
yeah,
feels like okay, well, the next thing would be it's just glass. But the funny thing about that is initially you go, ooh, futuristic, but a glass transparent screen is worse, right? Than
yeah.
like the
See,
screen that I'm looking at you at on right now. Like,
yeah, yeah,
I don't want my screen to be see-through and to be able to see the background through
yeah,
my screen. Like,
I
that's
know.
worse. But I
Yeah,
think that I like that about this movie that it's like
yeah,
even the way that he watches home movies, this sort of like
yes,
projected 3D image, it's like not great. It's like, yeah, it's cool that there's like a 3D projected image of your
yeah,
wife and your son in your house, but it also kind of looks like crap. And it's like I
yeah,
like the but I feel like that's sort of intentional in the design that it's like, well,
yeah,
it's more futuristic, but it's also like, is this better than just watching a
yeah,
video of
yeah,
where you can like see the environment and see the room and
yeah,
I'm not sure that this or in the world we live in now with like a Meta Quest where like you could put a VR thing on and be in the room with them. But I still
yeah,
think people would be like, I think I'd still prefer to just watch a
yeah,
a video on a
yeah,
normal screen, you know?
yeah. No, I think
Yeah.
you're totally right. It's kind of the stuff that we're all used to, right? Is good. We can make that better. But yeah, having this 3D projected image is, I mean, yeah, it still doesn't look great. It looks pretty like low resolution.
Yeah.
So,
And but
but yeah, that feels intentional. Yeah,
I think it's intentional that this movie's like, yeah, everything in the future is like, look, it's future, it's cooler,
yeah, yeah,
it's newer, it's high tech, but you're
yeah,
like, but is it better? And
yeah,
that's sort of I think we're living in that time right now where we're
yeah.
getting in, I don't know if you saw like the design for the new Jaguar. That Jaguar like did this whole like
Oh
they
no,
came out with
the
a
car.
car yeah, they came out with a car that people are like, "What are you guys do" but again, it's a thing where it's just like everything it's like future car, but it's just so impractical, like, there's nothing about the car seems realistic or
Yeah,
like you could actually drive this around like, it's too long in its body and not high enough off the ground to, like, clear most divots in the road,
yeah.
like
Is this the one that looks like the Batmobile? Like the
totally.
like Batman the
It
animated series
Yep,
Batmobile? Yeah, yeah, I'm looking at
yeah.
that, yeah,
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 and it's like, it's this thing where it's like, cool, future car like, cause you look at it and on first glance you go, "Oh, that's kind of a cool car, I'd like to
yeah,
sit in one of those." But then
yeah,
you think about it for a second, it's like, this isn't a practical vehicle at all, like, this
yeah.
doesn't
It's
make
it's it's future for the sake of future, it looks
Yeah,
futuristic, yeah,
and there's a lot of that in the world of Minority Report. There's a
yeah,
lot of stuff that just feels like it's been made
yeah,
futuristic, just, a cereal box that has a living ad on it
yeah,
that was thought
yeah,
and won't shut up. It's like, that's not better. That's
yep,
not a better,
no,
that's not a
that's annoying, and it
that's
throws
a
it across the
terrible
room. Yeah,
that's a terrible invention. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
but there's yeah, I like that. I will say this about the visual look of this movie before we start getting into the
yeah,
plot. Um, Again, I like that Steven Spielberg was very specific about this thing of like, I
yes,
want it to be the ugliest film I've ever made. Watching it last night, I was thinking, like, I think you could get the same effect across and dial it all back by, like, 10%.
Yeah,
I
you
think
yeah.
just 'cause to my eye, there are certain scenes where I'm just like, "Okay, I can barely see what's going on." Like, and I'm
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
I know that this is intentional. I know that this is on
yeah.
purpose." I think we get the same effect of, like, the griminess and the texture, and we
Mhm.
can dial it all back, like, 10%.
Yeah,
That being said, what this effect does so well for a movie in 2002 with this many visual effects is it blends the visual effects really well
yes.
into the movie. So,
Yeah,
like, that whole sequence when Tom Cruise is jumping from car to car on the
mhm.
magnetic highway looks as good as it does, I think because of how kind of blown out and saturated and grainy they've made the film grain so that
Yeah,
everything sort of blends into the same visual aesthetic and
right.
nothing looks like it's standing out too much, you know?
Yeah, yeah, it really the visual effects in this movie do not stand out as fake or, like, really bad because yeah, because it kinda looks bad anyway, and
Yeah,
so it fits into that total
right.
yeah, that aesthetic for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, this movie starts off has a great opening sequence. It's a great
I
way to
it's
introduce us
such a great
to yeah.
this is and I almost feel like this is kind of a prologue because
Yeah,
it's not but the best thing about this prologue is that it sets up everything. So I don't even know. I mean because this murder doesn't have any effect on the rest of the story, but it
right.
has an effect on the I mean it gives us where Tom Cruise is
Mhm.
in his belief and it gives us where Colin Farrell is. It sets up, you know, the problem and it sets up all these different things and it's such a great sequence.
It's
Just
also just a great way to teach the audience about
yes.
what the movie is. That,
Yes.
Colin Farrell is new to the office, he's there investigating, so the guy what's the guy's name that is Tom Cruise's that was in all those Steven Spielberg projects, and he's
He
he's the guy he's the guy that's sort of explaining, like, what a red ball is to Colin
Oh
Farrell.
yeah, oh
Um,
god. It's
that
Neil
actor
Neil McDonough,
yeah, Neil McDonough,
I think,
he's
yeah.
sort of he's giving us kind of the exposition and the background on everything because he's explaining it to Colin Farrell, and
Yes.
we're also getting to see it rather than him just
Yeah.
explaining it, we're also getting to see it work
Yeah.
in real time,
Well, and
and
it's yeah, it's Colin Farrell is us as the audience. So
yeah,
he is a new person in this world and they're explaining everything to him. So it's always great to have a new person in a movie that can be the audience surrogate, which also is
mhm,
interesting because he's the antagonist at the beginning.
yeah,
He's the antagonist. So we are seeing all this through him, which is an
yeah,
interesting choice, but also an extremely effective one that comes later. But yeah, I love, you know, you set it up and Tom Cruise, we don't get his backstory yet,
yeah,
but
no,
we know that he is very determined in what he does, right? He
yeah,
comes in, and then just the whole sequence of when he is using his hands
mhm,
to edit the, you know, the murder and to see everything like and
yeah,
the lights on his fingers, which is like it's all just like I mean, they have orchestra music and it's very much like a dance. Like it's
yeah,
so well choreographed and
yeah,
it looks so visually interesting. One of the things that I noticed in this movie on this watch, and I've noticed I've realized this with all of Steven Spielberg's films. Steven Spielberg is a master at blocking and framing with his DPs.
mhm,
Like he does things a lot of times that no one in real life ever does. He'll do things for the
yeah,
movie's sake, like in the way that somebody moves or the way that something happens. But it makes it feel so stylized, like his
sure,
style. Like, and this whole thing of him, you know, moving up and like having the see-through screens and moving all the moving all the images and all that. It's so great. It's such a cool
it's
thing to look
also
at.
Tom Cruise is such a full-bodied performer that he
Totally.
does and he always
Totally.
has been. It's so nice to have a performer like that who can
Yeah.
really make this whole thing feel real, you
Yes.
know?
And he
It's
gives it
kinda like
everything. Yeah.
it's kinda like Ray Fiennes in the Harry Potter movies. Whenever Ray Fiennes would do a spell in
Yeah.
those movies, I'd be like, "I know that that actor is on a set where there's not actually lightning
Yeah.
flying out of his wand," but Ray Fiennes has such a like physicality with
Yes.
how he and Tom Cruise is so good at that, that I know that Tom Cruise isn't actually looking at
Yeah.
a screen with all these images, but he's doing such a good job of selling the,
Yeah.
the
Yeah, that's really his performance is making those images go.
yeah,
And like,
yeah.
yeah, his performance is amazing. And there's a video online. Have you ever seen Every Frame of Painting? It's a YouTube channel, and they do, video essays, which are
Oh,
great.
sure. Yes, 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 yes.
So they have one called the Spielberg Oner. And
Mhm,
there's a lot of oners in this movie, but Spielberg doesn't really draw attention to them. He
mhm,
just the way that he blocks his actors and the way that he has things move around. He'll move from a wide shot into a close up, over to a medium shot, back to a close, and he does all these things. It's a great video, but it's one of the things that makes Spielberg so great is that he lets his actors perform. And you
mhm.
see, like, he doesn't cut so much. Like, at least in some of these scenes, he lets the actors play out together. So when Colin Farrell and Tom Cruise are acting off of each other, you can see that he's not really cutting, but he'll move the camera so it feels like a cut. It's not drawing attention to it, but it's such a great thing to look at. And he uses them a lot in Minority Report. There's a lot of like 1 minute oneers, or like minute and a half oneers,
Yeah,
and you don't even notice it because they're moving the camera, and it's so cool to see the actors. It's so cool when there's just an unbroken take and you can see that these actors are performing off of each other. And like we've
yeah,
talked about before, the editor isn't really in there manipulating things. It's just the talent of these two amazing actors. So
yeah.
and this kind of first scene, is a lot of long takes, which are just beautiful.
Yeah. I also think that, as much as this is setting up the world of,
Yeah.
pre-crime and what that is and how it functions, and we get to see all the rules of that. I think what's really important in this scene is that we learn, because Colin Farrell's character asks, like, well, the precogs can see a crime happening 3, 4 days out. How come the late call? Why?
Yeah.
Because this crime that's happening, it's like it's happening in like 20 minutes,
Yeah.
and it's like, why'd we just get the call? And
Yeah.
it's like, well, sometimes there are crimes of passion
Yes.
where the perpetrator didn't wake up that morning thinking they were going to do it, and
Yeah.
it happens. It's such a late call for the person. But what's important about that is going back to this theme of determinism
Yeah.
versus free will and choice, and the idea of the Minority Report, because Howard Marks is likely a guy who probably had a Minority Report. Like, Howard Marks is likely a case where it's like there's probably a scenario in which Howard Marks didn't stab his wife and her lover, like, that was because it's just such a, like, he doesn't go back into the house thinking that's what he's gonna do. He
Yeah.
he
Yeah.
thinks that his wife might be having an affair, but I don't think that he chooses whether or not he's gonna do it until,
Yeah.
unt
Until that moment.
that last moment. And
Yeah.
it's great suspense. Tom Cruise basically stops this guy at the last possible second before he's
Yeah.
gonna stab his wife. But even in that moment, he says, like, "I wasn't gonna do anything. I wasn't gonna do it."
Yeah.
And it's like, who knows? Maybe he wasn't. Maybe,
Yeah.
like, there's and that's
Well,
one of the big questions of this movie.
totally. And the thing that I like about this one, I'm not sure I'm not sure the Howard Marks had a Minority Report. You could
Mhm,
say that it does, but that's what makes it so great. But the nice thing about this murder is that I mean, he saves it at the last possible second.
mhm.
He pushes his hand out the window, which is one of the things that I'm talking about. He pushes his hand out the window, and then Tom Cruise looks at his watch, and the one goes to zero, and it's
Yep.
like it's like if you're doing that, you probably wouldn't look at your watch to see what it is, but it's so great. It works so well for the movie. But
Yeah,
this
exactly.
shows,
Like, he's not gonna look and be like, "Did I get
yeah,
here in time?" It's like,
yeah, yeah,
you got there in time.
yeah.
You
You got there in time.
you
We
got there in
know.
time. Yeah, yeah.
But it works so well because it eases the tension. Like, oh
Right.
my goodness, like wow, that was woo, because it's a ticking clock, which
Mhm,
is so great. But this this scene is also so great because it shows that Tom Cruise believes in the system
mhm.
wholeheartedly. Like, he does not question it.
But
And
also
within the scenes after, he does not question it.
but
And
also
this is like the
maybe
one that it's like, oh, this was probably going to happen. Sorry, go
well,
ahead.
it's like, and maybe that's why he checks his watch, is because he's even looking to go, right when I grabbed Howard Marks's hand is when it was raised in the position that at 1 second later
Yep.
he would have. So it's like a confirmation to him, like, boy,
Yes.
right on the money. Like, the
Yep.
precogs once again were right on the money, like,
Yes.
but here's the interesting thing about this movie philosophically,
Yes.
and this is what Colin Farrell's character is there to examine,
Yeah.
is what determinism says, pure determinism as a philosophy, is it says that there is no such thing in the universe as free will, that
Right.
we all exist on tram lines, and
Right.
we're just, if you were, like, forward and backward, our lives are just a series of cause and effect.
Yes.
And the the plot hole, like, this whole movie to me is about the plot hole or the plot holes in determinism as a philosophy,
Right.
because I've always felt like because I actually find determinism to be a very hard philosophy to argue against. When
Mm.
you actually get into the nitty-gritty of it, it's like, where does choice originate? And it's like, how do you choose that you're
Right.
hungry for a roast beef sandwich? Where does that originate? Did you make the choice to crave a roast beef? Like, do you actually know? You have the illusion that you're choosing
Yes.
between
Yes.
things, but how can you actually truly say that
Right.
you know that you were the decider and that it wasn't some other form of programming that came into your head from years earlier, or so,
Right. Right.
that you're preconditioned to respond to certain stimuli in a certain way, whatever. The the plot hole in determinism for me always has been, if I had a hypothetical machine that could show me the future and it said, in 5 seconds, Austin's going to pick up this bag of chips and open it up, I could disprove determinism by saying, "Since you showed me that video,
Yeah.
I'm gonna sit on my hands for 10 seconds."
Yeah.
And and what's interesting about this movie is it's like the entire concept of pre-crime pokes a hole into the narrative of determinism, because hard
Yes.
determinism says that the what the precogs see is Howard Marks is going to murder his wife and her lover. But the fact that pre-crime exists and they can see it happening, and they are people who go and interrupt the flow of causal reality and
Yeah.
create new causal chains and change the future. Tom Cruise's character really should know, and every cop at pre-crime should know, that the future is not fixed, that it is not, because even that scene, there's a scene coming up later where they're arguing this, Colin Farrell
Yeah. Yeah.
And Tom Cruise throws this ball across
Yeah.
the screen.
Love
I
that
love
scene.
this scene.
Yeah.
And Colin Farrell catches the ball and he goes, "Why'd you catch that?" And he goes, "Well, you it was
It was
gonna
gonna
fall."
fall.
And he goes, "But you caught it." And he goes, "Just the fact that you caught it doesn't mean it wasn't going to fall." Determinism, though, would say
Yeah.
the fact that he caught it means it was not going to fall. It was never going to fall.
Mhm.
Colin Farrell was always going to catch it. Uh, and so that's the sort of philosophical interplay, is like,
Yeah.
if someone intervenes in the cause and effect of rolling this ball, then that person does change the future of that ball. But if the future is fixed by determinism, that means that the ball never was going to fall. Howard Marks was never going to kill his wife. Pre-crime was always going to be invented because the precogs were always going to be
Yeah.
born out of heroin
Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
This was always all going to happen, which is like, then why are they seeing the murders at all?
Yeah.
Because what they should be seeing is visions of pre-crime officers stopping these murders.
Right.
That's what they should be seeing.
Right.
But
Well, and
it's yeah,
that's what makes it so interesting too, because the problem with the system, this is the system has been intentionally kept a secret. The
right.
Minority Report system has intentionally been kept a secret because you can't, like, the woman says, Hinneman, she says, you can't have a system that creates doubt, like, no matter how little doubt there is, it's still doubt. And so if there's doubt in any case, we're not going to accept the system.
Right.
And so it's such a, and so um Max von Sydow, he has intentionally kept this down for the purpose of keeping people thinking that they are safe, and thinking that everything is everything, it's 100% accurate. And
Well, and that's another big theme in this movie too, is like
yeah,
the price of quote unquote safety.
yes,
And the idea behind the pre-crime system is, yeah, but like murder rates have gone down by 90%. So
yeah,
even if there's like a 2% latency,
yeah,
with
yeah,
the precog system, you can't argue with the results. But then you
yeah,
have to go, are the results that pre-crime works, or is it that everyone's afraid
yeah,
of their behavior because they know that there are precognitives that are watching everything they do, and then you have this sort of surveillance state that everyone lives in, not only
Yeah.
just with the
Yeah.
eye scanners that are everywhere, because that's also the world that we live in, where it's like increasingly it's just like you've got to really not be thinking clearly to commit murder in the modern world,
Yeah.
because there was a time where you could kill someone and dump them in a river and get away with it, and
Yeah.
we don't live in that time anymore. And if you shoot us forward 30 years and add in precognitives into the mix, it's like, yeah, who would, commit crime in that world or commit violent crime? But it still asks the question like, what's the price though of your
Yeah.
perceived safety? What are
Yeah.
you giving up for the
Well, and
safety?
what are we taking away from the people who had these minority reports,
Right.
Like who
Right.
had an alternate, which Tom Cruise says, like, are you telling me that I've put away innocent people? Like that I've haloed innocent people? Like
Yeah.
and this is what's so great about Tom Cruise's character arc. He starts out this movie, as we just said, that he is fully into pre-crime. Like he is
Mhm.
fully in. It is completely like accurate. There are no flaws in the system, which is what Colin Farrell is saying. He's like, I'm looking for flaws. He
Mhm.
says there's no system, there's no flaws. It is perfect.
Perfect. I
And
agree.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And he
Yeah.
says that there's got to be a flaw, and it's got to be human, right?
Mhm.
And there is a human flaw, but it's also there is a flaw with the Minority Report. So it's such a great. So he starts in one position, being completely committed to pre-crime, and then pretty much by the midpoint he's switched and he wants to completely take it down. um
Well, and it's obviously because of what happened to him and what he
exactly,
experiences, and
exactly.
the but yeah, we learn after this great opening
Yeah.
sequence,
Yes.
we have this kind of like fun little propaganda commercial that plays that kind
Yeah.
of once again it teaches us about the history of pre-crime and the precogs and everything.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
like right away, it's
Great way to
yeah.
exposition dump. Like it's a
Well,
great way to do that.
yeah. And this is also a great scene because we also see that this commercial is playing on the street as Tom Cruise is jogging through kind of a grimy looking neighborhood. And again, it's like this juxtaposition of like, oh, Maryland is so much safer now. The world's so much safer. Thank you,
Mhm.
pre-crime. And then we see where he is, and it's like, I don't know, this place doesn't look like some
Yeah.
utopia, you know?
No.
And Tom Cruise's character, who's this believer in justice and right and wrong, he's going on the street to buy like dirty street drugs and
Yeah.
in the middle of the night. And I'll tell you, I don't know if did you get this growing up? Because I definitely as a kid never understood the significance of this drug dealer saying, "It's like my daddy used to tell
Yeah.
me, in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king." When I was a
Yeah.
kid, I just always thought that that was in the movie just to add like
Yeah. To be
creepiness,
creepy.
and
Yeah.
yeah, and it wasn't literally I'm just dumb, but it wasn't until last night that I was like, "Oh, that guy took his own eyes out because he lives in a world where your eyeballs are scanned everywhere you go."
Mm.
So and also later on in the movie, the guy that does Tom Cruise's eyeball swap
Yeah.
goes, "From a mutual friend." And it's
Yeah,
that
yeah,
guy.
yeah. Yeah,
And
that
it was
I think
yeah,
I remember, I think I picked up on that later, the mutual friend, right? I got
yeah.
that. The taking out his own eyes, I never thought about that. But I mean, it does there's okay, so the screenplay was written, it's credited by two writers, Scott Frank, who did the majority of the work, I believe, and then John Cohen, I think. And John Cohen was the one who really had this motif of eyes.
Mhm,
Eyes are all in it. They
mhm.
scan your eyes. He has to switch
Can
out
you
his eyes.
see?
Can you see?
Yeah.
Like, and he's like the man with one eye is king. And I really love this motif throughout it. But I also remember when I first watched this. This is one of the first times I remember like this main character is really, really flawed.
Yeah.
You always want your main character to have flaws because that makes him more relatable, makes him not perfect, right? And I remember thinking like, man, Tom Cruise is like in a really bad place. Like he's a cop. Why is he addicted to drugs? Like why is he doing, and he is really, really flawed. And I think that's what makes his character so interesting. Again, this kind of duality of him wanting something so bad, but he's also contributing to the crime rate in other areas, right? In
Well,
the
and
drug
yeah.
problem. So
Well, and again, in typical Philip K. Dick fashion, this is a noir that takes place in Blade Runner's a noir film,
Yes.
and
Yes.
and but like it's a noir story, and oftentimes the detective, the Dick character in a
Yep.
noir story is pretty troubled,
Yeah.
is like
Yeah.
an alcoholic or yeah,
Yeah.
and so this is very typical, but it's also like yeah, for Tom Cruise, especially from who we see him as in that opening scene, it's surprising that
Yeah.
he goes home and he's like, "I'm gonna get high on what's essentially future heroin
Yeah.
and pass out
Yep.
watching home videos of my son."
Mhm.
I really like the design of the Heroin drug.
Yeah, me
I've
too, the
always
little
liked it.
yep. It sticks
Yeah, I
out.
think it's
Yeah.
cool. I think it's kind of a thing that I'm like, I don't know what that is. I like in my mind, it's like there's like a little balloon of an
Yeah.
inhalant that's
Yep.
inside this thing, and you know,
Yeah.
but I like it. I like that it's like that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Some new kind of future
Yeah.
device that yeah.
Yeah. It is
Mhm.
is very it looks very interesting, it's very visually interesting because he sucks it in and the little balloon things goes down, and it kinda looks yeah, it
Yeah.
looks like it's attractive because that's how you wanna make drugs look, right?
Yeah.
Attractive, and so, yeah, I like that design as well, but, yeah,
Yeah, and again,
he's in a bad place.
yeah, great visual storytelling here without being too prescriptive. Before we even learn specifically that his son was taken or kidnapped or disappeared, we just see him at home doing drugs, watching old videos of his son and his wife. And obviously, his son and wife are absent. So
Yes.
we know at this point, like, either they were killed by someone or,
Yeah.
but like that's, nice. And then he shows up to work the next day. Colin Farrell's there again.
Yeah.
He has a conversation with Lamar Burgess too,
Yes.
about, oh, you got to keep an eye out for this
Yeah.
Whitwer,
Whitwer, Danny
Yeah.
Whitwer, yeah.
Mhm. And, but goes into work, and essentially what happens to Tom Cruise's character is, a case comes in, a brown ball, a premeditated crime,
Well,
and
they have okay, so sorry, before
yeah.
that, he has that conversation with Danny Whitwer about the ball. He throws
Oh,
it
yeah.
to him. And then Colin Farrell's like, I need to go in and see the precogs into the temple. I also
Right.
love they don't go into this. This all kind of goes into the whole thing, but there's a whole religious aspect that they kind
Sure.
of point out, which I thought was very, very interesting. They don't go into depth on it, but it all fits with the theme and the narrative. But they have to go into the temple, and so they all go in for the first time, and the one weird guy who takes care of them. Also, a lot of really great weird one-off characters.
Yeah, there's a lot of little weird future nerdy
Yeah,
guys. Tim
Wally.
Blake Mason plays a really
Yeah,
weird guy, and
I love Tim
Rufus.
Blake Nelson.
Y
Yeah,
y y yeah.
it's
Mhm.
great stuff. So they go in there, and he's kind of taking care of them, and he's like, "I can't touch you," and then they're talking about all this, and they're having this philosophical and religious conversation, and and then everybody leaves, and Tom Cruise is sitting there with Agnes, and he can see that she's awake, and he's like looking at her, and then there was great jump scare of
Right.
like he's sitting there and he's like, "Hey, Wally," and then she jumps up and she grabs
Nice.
him, and she's like, "Can you see?" Right, and he looks up and he sees Anne Lively,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Who is this woman?" And this to me is the inciting incident, really, because
Correct,
this
'cause
is what sets everything out in
before
motion.
his crime happens, he goes to Tim Blake Nelson, and
Yes.
yeah,
He goes in there and he's like,
that's right.
again, Tim Blake Nelson is super weird. And he's like, "Hey, I gotta have a tie. You like this one?" He's like,
Yeah,
he's
also
a
yeah, I don't know what accent Tim Blake Nelson is doing in
no,
this movie. I was like,
no.
"What voice is he?" And also, I thought this my whole life when Tom Cruise says to him when he's like, "I'm gonna take this file out on
Yeah.
Anne Lively, this file," and Tim Blake Nelson goes, "That's against the rules," and Tom Cruise goes, "Anything else going on in here that's against the rules?" I'm
Yes.
like, is he insinuating that Tim Blake Nelson's doing, like, gross stuff with these
Yes.
guys?
That's what I was thinking. I mean,
Yeah.
I remember from the first time I saw it, I was like, "Ew,
Yeah,
what?"
that's
Like
I've
it
always been like, and Tim Blake Nelson's character just feels like a guy who's
yeah.
and again, like, we got a lot of, like, really weird little pervert
Yeah.
boys, like,
Yeah.
Wally's kind of a weird little pervert boy with the
Yep.
precogs,
And it
especially with
yep. Especially with
Agatha.
Agatha. Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
it's implied that he doesn't have an appropriate relationship with her. So
yeah,
but
yeah,
yeah, there's all these little weird things, and I kind of love that, because it's just off-putting,
yeah.
It's like, "Oh, but that's kinda how you want this world to feel." It
I
looks all clean, but
yeah.
really there's a lot of bad stuff under the surface.
again, it's really interesting that like this world purports to be like we've solved the problem of
Yes.
murder. Everyone's it's we're safer than we've ever been. But then it's populated with all of these just weird, icky, grimy characters, and the
Yeah.
look of it has this off-putting aesthetic, and I think that that's
Yeah.
really cool, that
Yeah.
juxtaposition. But
And
yeah,
he
you're right.
so
This is definitely the inciting incident
yeah,
too.
and he steals because Anne Lively does have a Minority Report.
Mhm.
And one of her streams is missing, and he says that there are dozens of others that have been missing. And so he takes it, he shows it to Lamar, and that's really important. He shows it to Lamar,
Right.
and Lamar's like, what's going on?" And he doesn't really know. And then he like changes the subject to where we really kind of realize that okay, his wife is now his ex-wife. She's still alive. So we know that there's something going on there, but he kind of also tells him Lamar is very worried about because pre-crime is going to go national. So
Yeah.
he is like, you got to look out. We've got to save pre-crime, and then he shows him this. And I mean, in the end, this thing that he is showing him, that's who Lamar killed.
Right.
And I mean, if there's a big plot hole, it's how did Lamar make this all happen?
Well,
In
because it's
my own,
also well, I would say the only thing that's left out is like I know that they bring up the idea that sometimes after a crime is solved, like
yes, there's echoes.
there's echoes, so they keep seeing the Howard Marks murder even after the Howard Marks murder has been stopped, and I get that, but it's
Yeah,
also like if Lamar came in to kill Anne Lively right after the first guy was thwarted, wouldn't there be new balls? Like, wouldn't the precogs
yeah,
have
yeah,
new?
yeah,
And but here's the thing about that is we can just go and maybe this could have been written into the screenplay, but we could just go, well, Lamar has access to be able to say, I'm going to like wait, somehow make sure I'm there to get rid of the ball that has my
right.
name on it. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah,
Or
that's very, very possible, and that's also something that, this essentially is a time travel movie without
right,
any time travel because they're seeing the
right.
future, but it's also one of the things that's like, okay, yeah, when you think about it too hard, it's not. But in my head canon, he
Mhm.
tells, because like, okay, how did Lamar from this point get the precogs to see something that hasn't happened where Tom Cruise doesn't even know who this person is?
Mhm.
In my idea, it's he saw that thing, and right from that moment he thought, okay, how do I frame Tom Cruise now?
Oh yeah.
Like, and so he hired a guy who, because Tom Cruise says, like he's thought every day what he would do to the person. So he has premeditated this murder in his
But I
mind for
I also
years.
think because I thought the same thing. I was like, isn't John Anderton killing Leo Crow a crime of passion? Like he doesn't
Yeah.
know that day that he's going to do it, and it happens because he's caught off guard by the feelings that he feels.
Yeah.
But it could be one of I think you're right. It could either be that Tom Cruise has thought, I would if I ever see the guy that took my son, I'll kill him.
Yeah.
But also it could be premeditated in the fact that it was planned by Lamar Burgess. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
it was an orchestrated murder, even though it's a crime of passion. The
Yes.
events of
Yes.
it were orchestrated by. But then you'd think, wouldn't Lamar's name come out on?
Well, maybe again the red
Yeah,
ball, or
right.
the brown
Yeah,
ball. Maybe he
who
did.
knows?
He's got something going on with that,
Yeah, who knows? Yeah,
which I like. Actually, I like that you have said that. I like
yeah,
that. But anyway, they have this whole conversation. The next day is when the brown ball comes in, and they're like, "Oh," which I love this reveal. Love this reveal of
it's great.
him. He's doing his whole, like orchestra thing, and he's doing, and I like that they have the two witnesses, which
Mhm,
feels very much like this is what would happen legally. You'd have to have
mhm,
two people who witness it, and like, okay, we've got to watch. I love that little detail. But
mhm.
he is doing this, and he like Tom Cruise's face, like he's like his acting in this is just so. It's like you're going through all the emotions with him.
Dude, Cruise crushes this movie.
Oh,
There's yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
And he, like, gets the one guy to leave, and then he turns off the things, and he is just watching this murder to get as much information as he can. And then I also love Wally's, like, he sees, like, you could see the terror on Tom Cruise's face. And then
Yeah, I love it when the witnesses are like, "Chief Anderton, what are we
yeah,
looking at here?" And he just turns them off. But yeah,
yeah,
when he realizes it's him, and it's just like I love the split screen when it's half
yeah,
his face on the
yes.
screen doing the murder and half him looking at it. That's great. Great
Oh,
shot.
it's
Great
amazing. Just
composition. Yeah.
beautiful.
Mhm.
And then Wally's like, "I've always liked you." He's like, "So I'm gonna give you 2 minutes before I ring the bell." And so he runs out, and this is one of these Spielberg oneers, which I love.
Yeah.
Um, he goes into the elevator. He's in the elevator, uh, and then Colin Farrell comes in, and this shot is all one take. He's outside the elevator. He goes in. He's trying to close it, and then Colin Farrell comes in. He's like, "Hey, I found a problem." Which Colin Farrell's talking about the Neuroin, like
Yeah.
his drug addiction.
Right.
And Tom Cruise is like, "You set me up." So we
Yeah.
automatically think like, "Oh, he set him
Yeah. The
up. This
first
is who did it."
first time you see this movie, you're like, okay, Colin Farrell is trying to poke holes in the system, and yeah.
Yep.
But also, movie logic. You're kind of like, that seems a little too obvious. It's probably something else. But yeah, Tom Cruise's
Yeah.
character for sure in this moment thinks you planted
Yeah.
something. Yeah.
Well, and I love this too because he's got the gun to his neck, and, and Colin Farrell goes, "Put the gun down, John. I haven't heard a red ball go off right now." And then you hear the alarm go off, and
Yeah, it's great.
Colin Farrell's face, his acting in this is also amazing because you see just like the dread, and he's like, "Oh crap, like I
Oh
could
crap!
get
This guy's
murdered."
about to shoot me.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like
This-
and
yeah.
he's scared. So I love the scene. He gets away. We have the whole chase, the maglev chase, which is fun.
Okay,
It,
listen. I wanna talk about this chase scene.
okay, let's go
Okay,
for it. Yep.
so I love this movie, and I think that there are times where Steven Spielberg, as brilliant as he is, can be his own worst enemy and being like, "We gotta do some, like, fun,"
Yeah, 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 yeah.
just like and this sequence is the sequence that has, like, most of them. Like,
Yeah.
this sequence
Yeah,
has, like,
I can see that.
just, like, one too many things where I go that pull me out of it, that always have, even when I was a kid, where I would just kinda go, like, because I actually really I love him jumping across the cars on the,
Yeah,
I think that's awesome. I
yeah.
think that's really cool. Him falling in front of the yoga studio and, like, being,
I
like,
yeah. I
falling into the pool.
remember you even when you saw this movie, you pointed that out the first
Eh
time, like
yeah,
in
as a kid,
2002.
I
I
just was
remember
like, "That's
I agree, yeah.
stupid," and I
It's
still to
weird.
this day am just like, it's corny,"
Yeah. It
but
is.
the
It is.
thing that really kills me is McDonough going, "Anderton!"
Yeah.
I just am like, "Dude," like, like, when he goes, "Anderton!" It's like
Yeah,
it's like something out of, like, it's so, like, 80s Steven Spielberg
it
being
is.
like,
Very
"Get
much.
back here, Indiana Jones!" Like,
Yeah.
I'll get you,"
It is. It's one of
it's
those things that
right,
nobody would really do that, but it's for the
right,
movie, and that's
yeah.
I
I l
actually so
I I
I
like the
think
staging of this, like,
yes.
alleyway fight. I like the,
Yes.
yeah,
I agree with you. The jetpacks are kind of funny. Like
yeah,
they're a little cheesy, but I actually do love this whole sequence, especially the camera move. It moves up, Tom Cruise is running and climbing up all these
mhm.
fire escapes,
Great
and the
camera
camera
move.
is moving up and around, and then he like falls and he catches the guy in the jetpack. And this is definitely the most cheesy. Well, and then when they have their fight scene in which comes up next.
Yeah,
And
they go into an apartment and, like, the jetpack, like, cooks
yeah,
this, like,
cooks the
guy's
burgers.
burgers, like, there's just, like, one too many things where I'm like, "Hey, maybe one of these," I would have been like,
Yeah,
"That's
yeah,
fine." But
yeah,
it's, like, all in this sequence. There's, like, 6 things in a row that make me just go, because like,
yeah,
even the way that Colin Farrell and Tom Cruise have their fight is
yeah,
kinda corny. The way that they're,
yeah,
like, fist
yeah.
fight,
They fist fight. Yeah.
Yeah, and I do like the gravity shotguns. I think those are
Oh,
really
all
cool.
those are awesome. The
I
way
like
he
those.
twists it and he
Yeah,
shoots and the dudes,
yeah.
yeah. And
I
that's
think that
another one. He flips it and then he stops at the camera for a second and then he like gets hit, which yeah, it just all the choreography in that is
when I
fun.
like all
That
their
part is
I
fun.
like all their non-lethal, like,
Yes.
police weapons because
Yeah.
obviously
The
they're
six
trying.
sticks
Yeah,
and yeah.
mhm.
Yeah, I
Um,
like that. I like that as well. It's a fun sequence. It is definitely the most cheesy. And this is the other thing. So they're fighting in the Lexus
yep,
manufacturing plant or
yep,
whatever.
yep.
And I don't know how Tom Cruise survived it. It looks like
I
the it
It
looks
looks like
like he
they
got
press,
crushed.
yeah, 100%, and yeah, and then he's just, but also it's like, you're telling me this factory just pumps cars out onto the street and then you can just
Yes,
drive them?
you can drive
You
him
can
away.
you can just drive them away and
What are they
nobody's out there?
doing?
They don't
Yeah.
have any cars out there, they don't have anybody, like, like
This is very much again the Spielberg of like, I'm gonna make it exciting and I don't really care. I don't care if you think about the logical side of it. Like
yeah,
in Jurassic Park, where the T-Rex comes through the fence, and like breaks through the fence, and then the car is falling down a cliff. through that breakout, which
Right.
is where the T-Rex was just standing. Like that does not make sense logically when you think
Right.
about it. But in the
Right.
movie, it's so great. And this is one of those scenes where it's like, you know,
And this is
whatever.
such this scene is so Indiana Jones. Like it's such
Oh,
a
and
like
the
like
music sounds like Indiana Jones.
yeah, this scene is so like Indiana Jones would be like on like an assembly line where they're
Yep.
building, Fords, and he would drive away in the car and like wave his
Yeah.
hat at the
Yeah.
Nazis as it, but even the
Yeah.
thing that kills me here is when Colin Farrell pounds his fist
That's
when
what I
he's
was gonna say too. That's the most cheesy to me. That's
oh
the one that he's like,
jeez.
I'm like, okay, that's a little much.
Like
But
dude,
here's the thing,
yeah.
and I totally this is definitely kind of the most corny, but this is the thing about Steven Spielberg that I love, that a lot of directors, or I shouldn't say that. This is the thing I love about Steven Spielberg. He always makes things fun.
Yeah.
Like, and the framing and the way that everything is put together, yes, it's corny, but like it's a fun sequence. And like I'm engaged the whole time. And then when you kind of look back on it, you're like, "Yeah, that was a little corny, that was a little cheesy." But like it's such a good time
Yeah.
when you're watching it.
Yeah.
Like, and it pulls you in, the intensity is there. So
Yeah.
I can overlook it, but it is totally corny.
Yeah, and John Anderton then drives this Lexus that they would totally be able to track, but whatever, it's fine. He drives it to, the house of the woman who was the co-inventor of pre-crime because he wants to ask her
Yes.
how could a person fake, a prevision,
Prevision.
thing. And, this is another kinda just, like, weird thing in this movie where we're like, "Oh, I guess this woman has, like, bioengineered
Yeah.
new pl" she's like Poison Ivy, like, there's some all the kind of side characters in this movie are very strange and
Yes.
idiosyncratic, and
Yes.
this woman is no exception. She is a weird little
Yeah.
pervert woman.
Yeah.
There's
Well, and I kinda love all the side characters because
yeah,
from this point until, pretty much well, there's a huge section in here where it just feels almost like a book in a good
yeah,
way of like he goes to one person and it's just like weird. He has this weird experience and then he has to go to another person and if it's just another weird, strange experience and it's kind of like I really like these sequences, but they are very strange. And this whole thing of her, she's like he like comes in, he can't breathe, and she's like, she kisses him at one point, and
yeah.
it's like, why did you kiss him? Like, what was the point of that? I don't
She's
really know.
Poison Ivy. She's
Yeah.
she really it's this whole sequence again, this movie, he is moving through these, like, very strange characters. It's
Mhm.
always he's on this series of encountering these very strange, odd people.
Yes.
But yeah, she explains to him the concept of a minority report, something he's never heard, that
Yeah.
sometimes the precogs disagree. And when they disagree, they usually go with, they just delete whatever the minority report is,
Yep.
but the minority report is stored inside of the precog who predicted it. And
Yep.
usually it's the most powerful of the three, which is Agatha.
Yes.
So Tom Cruise now knows he needs to somehow manage to break into pre-crime and steal Agatha and download his minority report to
To prove his
prove
innocence.
his innocence.
Yeah.
And so now he's on a quest to figure out how to do that. I kind of like this whole sequence. He's got to go to uh, he's got to figure out how to get back into pre-crime. He's got to get new eyeballs because
Yes.
his eyes are being scanned everywhere he goes. This is something that Anthony even asked me this last night, my brother,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
he was like, this character that Peter Stormare plays,
Yes.
this
Yes.
eye doctor,
Wah,
another just
wah, wah,
yep,
wah, wah.
and another weird, pervy future
Weird
guy,
dude.
just
Yeah.
weird, pervy, strange, but, like, everything in this scene is scripted like, "Uh-oh, this guy is an
Yes.
enemy of John
Yeah.
Anderton because John
Yeah.
Anderton put him away, and this guy's actually, like, a psychopath and a bad
Yeah.
guy,
Yeah.
and he's not going to do the eye transplant that John Anderton paid him to do. He's gonna, like, mess him
Yeah. He's
up."
gonna like murder him. Yeah, or something.
And to this day, I was trying to read the scene a different way, but I'm like, no, everything about Peter Stormare's performance, everything about the dialogue sounds like he's about to, you know,
Yeah.
do uh, like that he's not gonna help him. And then it just turns out that it's a misdirect. It's like, no, he
Yeah. It is.
he he did the surgery and
Yeah, he gave him
yeah,
new eyes, like,
yep,
and I yes. It totally is. It really seems like, oh, he's gonna set him on fire. He's gonna do something really bad to him,
Right.
but it's like, no, he did what he asked him to, and he
Yep.
didn't pay him that much money. So,
Yeah.
like,
He
so
underpaid him, and he even throws in the extra, like, "I'm gonna give you this face jammer that, like, changes
yeah,
your face."
yeah,
And maybe the thing is that this guy I don't know, we could make a headcanon where it's like this character sees that he knows that John Anderton is on the run from the law, and he
yeah,
likes that. He likes that, like, this high and
yeah.
mighty police chief that put him in prison is on the
Gotta
run
owe
from
him a
pre-crime
favor.
for
Yeah,
yeah, for murder, but also maybe he just likes the idea that this pokes a hole in the pre-crime
yeah,
narrative, and he's like, "I wanna help you do what you're trying to do. I wanna
yeah.
help you."
Possible.
Who
Yeah.
knows? But it is
I
a weird scene because it's scripted and performed
yes,
explicitly, like
yes.
yeah,
And I kind of thought too, like maybe he didn't really give him any pain medicine, and he just
right,
ripped out his eyes. That's what I'm gonna. Because yeah, it is a total misdirect. It keeps you thinking, but it is a great scene because it is so strange, and there's like
yeah.
snot everywhere, which is like
I
so
was gonna
weird
ask
and
you
gross.
about this. I was gonna
Okay.
ask you about this. Do you think there's anything to this cold? Because Lamar has it at the beginning of the
Oh
movie
yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
The
He's
first scene we see with Lamar, he's like, "Oh, this cold. You would have thought we would have." They make
yeah,
a point of it.
yeah,
He goes, you'd think we would have figured out a cure for the common cold by now." And then when we see Peter Stormare, he's like, "Oh, this
yeah,
cold. Can't get rid of it." Do
yeah.
you think is there something to I was
I
trying to figure that out. I was like,
I
why would
think
they be so
yeah. Why is that keep coming up?
yeah.
I think there's things that you cannot change. The
Mhm.
common cold is one that you can't really change, right? And it's like you can't. There's nothing that's foolproof. There is no perfection. There is nothing that you can do to kind of change some of the things that are constant, I guess.
Here's what I'm gonna offer as a theory.
Okay, great.
It's that we're focusing on all the wrong things with our future tech. We're
Mm,
putting all
yeah,
of
yeah,
our
yeah, yeah, yeah,
technology into, "Ooh, technology to scan your eyeballs so that we can give you personalized ads," and,
yeah. That's great.
and all
Yeah.
instead of going like, "How about you figure out how to cure the cold?" Like, how
Mhm.
about like, like, "Ooh, future drugs that will turn your children into telekinetic mutants," like, how about figure out how to make me not have colds anymore.
Yeah.
Give me a shot that I take every year, a pill that I take, and I don't get the cold anymore.
Mhm. Yeah.
Focus on helping people, improving healthcare.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that commentary being made
Yeah. Yeah.
that,
That could be. Yeah. I like
yeah,
that. I like that a lot.
yeah,
Actually, I think it's really good. But this whole sequence is actually really great
yeah.
because he has it. This is when we find out what happened to his son because he
Mhm.
takes drugs and he passes out for like 6 hours, and he sees his son, and he's at the pool, and he goes under to hold his breath, and then his watch drops in, and he comes up and he can't find his son,
Yeah.
which is like I don't this feels very very intentional because it's very frustrating,
Mhm.
but it's like what happened to his kid, but that is again that feels very intentional, like
Oh, yeah, it's every parent's worst nightmare. It's the
absolutely.
idea of, like, I took my eyes off him for 2 seconds, like,
Yeah,
he's underwater and somebody swims by and he just looks at that person for
yeah,
literally 2 seconds, and when he looks back, Sean's gone.
yeah,
And it's like, I like that it's sort of done in that way
yeah,
where it's like
me
he
too.
blames himself, but it's also like, how much more could you have done? You
Yeah.
know?
I
You were
mean,
ri
yeah, you can't yeah, like, you're playing
Yeah,
yeah. So it's and I like that is very much his drive, which is throughout the whole movie. They keep talking about, "You we could have saved Sean with this," and
right.
it comes up later. But, he has that, but then they're searching the building with these spiders, which are eye scanners that have legs that can walk around. And this whole sequence, I love the camera work in this sequence as well.
Oh,
It
it's great.
draws it draws attention to itself, but I love it because
Yeah.
the spiders are coming in through the door and the camera moves up and it follows all these spiders through all of the different apartments that are in this building.
And now this is a bit of Steven Spielberg fun that I don't mind as much. I think
Yes.
that I get
Yes.
a kick out of this, the couple that's fighting
Yeah.
and
They
they
stop.
stop fighting so they can get scanned, and then they go right back to fighting.
Fighting.
I
Yep.
get a kick out of that. I think that
I
that's
do
funny.
too.
I also think that these spiders surprisingly look pretty good for
Yeah, they
2002.
do.
I think and again, I think that it's something about the color grading and the film
Yes.
grain that it blends in the VFX nicely,
Yeah,
and,
it does.
and
And they make an announcement and they're like, "Hey, we're gonna scan everybody," and Tom Cruise hears it, but he can't take the bandages off because he
mhm,
says you'll go blind if he takes it off before 12 hours. So
yeah.
but he goes into the ice, he goes into the water. And I guess Tom Cruise did this all for real, and he actually learned how to get like one little bubble out
Of
of his
course he did.
nose.
Of
Yeah,
course he
right. Like
did.
that's such a Tom Cruise thing. Like,
It's like, "No, I'm going to do it. I'm
yeah, like
going to Steven, I'm going to do it."
yeah,
He's like,
don't.
"Um,
You're not
we"
gonna not let me do this.
he's like, "We
Like,
can do it in post." He's like, "I'm gonna figure it out, Steven."
and he did, and
He's
it's great.
smiling maniacally the whole time he's saying it. "Don't
Yeah,
worry, I got
yeah,
it."
yeah. Exactly. I am sure that's how
Yeah.
that conversation went. But it's great.
I also love this gag before the spiders come in where he's trying to get some food and to eat,
Oh, he like
and
moldy
for no
sandwich.
reason,
Yeah,
Peter Stormare has a moldy sandwich next to a not moldy sandwich and a
yeah,
jar of moldy milk next to a jar of normal milk, and it's like, "Why?" But it's like, just so
yep.
the movie can be like, "Oh, watch, he's gonna eat."
It's just in that whole,
But
disgusting.
there's a lot of that in this movie, though. There's a lot of
Oh,
just, like,
yeah, ton.
gross. There's a lot of
Yeah.
just, like, ew, gross out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and again, I
Mhm.
think it is kind of like this is the bad there's still bad stuff that's happening, and
Yeah.
there's still the bad under the good, but
Yeah.
yeah, he so the spiders almost go out of the room, but then the bubble pops, and then they come in and they spark the water, and he saw he pulls up his eye, and I guess he doesn't go blind, but,
I always just took it as like, he can like open it a little bit for like a couple
yeah,
seconds and like
yeah,
he's not,
that's what I took it as
I
too.
think Peter Stormare means like don't take the bandages off and try to just like what
Yeah, yeah.
like let your eyes heal. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um
So, but luckily he has had his eyes changed out and they work, which is a
yep,
great, and then they leave and
he
then this
goes
is where
to
he goes to pre-crime, which I
yeah.
actually really like this little scene that they have before because he's walking up and they're giving a presentation about the precogs and
Mhm.
this guy to like these like elementary school kids. He's like, the precogs have it really, really great. Like they're so fun. Like they're in such a, I can't remember exactly what he says, but he's talking about the precogs like they have this amazing, wonderful life, and like it's really amazing to be a precog, is what he says. And
And
it's like,
no,
no, it's not. Like
no,
they're
you
doped
live
up all day.
you live in a pool of water on
Yeah,
drugs and you're forced to just look at images of murder all day long.
yeah,
And that's your life,
yeah,
and then Wally talks to you about his mom's boyfriend and
yeah,
strokes your hair and brushes your teeth, and,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
like,
Very
no,
weird.
it's not a good life, but,
No.
Tom Cruise uses polyjuice potion and changes his face into
I love
it
that.
it does it feels like that, right? Like, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
but yeah, he jams this pen in there and he changes his face and then he uses his old eyes to get back in, which is maybe another plot hole where it's like,
yeah. It is
wouldn't they
totally.
have wouldn't they have revoked his security
Yeah,
clearance?
that would
They
have
can't
been done immediately. Like
yeah,
that
yeah,
was
but
protocol back in the 90s, like or
sure.
80s probably, like
Yeah,
whenever they
sure.
started it.
You know,
But whatever.
but whatever. It works to get us where we need to go. There's another thing that happens here pretty quickly. He gets in there. He needs Agatha. Colin Farrell shows up and he's like, Anderton, stop! And
Mhm.
before everyone can get to him, he flushes him and Agatha down this like drain pipe. And this is
Yeah.
one of those things that happens in movies from time to time where I'm like, we'll just jump in after him. Like where it's like
Yeah.
in Captain America: The Winter Soldier when Nick Fury just goes in that hole in the ground to get
Yeah.
away from the Winter Soldier, and it's like, well, jump in the hole. Like he's
He's probably not that far. Go in after him.
he's like 10 feet down in like a sewer
Yeah.
hole, like, and he has like a broken arm. Like, get in there.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's just kind of
Yeah.
like, hey, if you want, like, wherever John Anderton and Agatha just slid down to, just jump in after them. Like,
Yep.
just, but they're gone. They're
No,
gonna
they're
have to,
gone. He's like, and
yeah,
now he can murder anyone, which he
right.
gets Agatha.
Mhm.
She's and this okay. I got to talk about
Samantha
uh
Morton.
Samantha Morton. Yes,
Yeah,
Samantha Morton. She
yeah.
is so good in this movie.
It kind of breaks my heart because it was such a breakout role for her, and
Yeah.
I kind of feel like Samantha Morton never really she's had lots of great roles over her career since this movie, but I feel
Yeah.
like this movie showed the promise of, like, Hollywood's next great actress,
Yes.
and I just feel like her career has not really like the way that Colin Farrell has become
Yes.
such a highly respected character actor. I feel like Samantha Morton's performance is so good in this movie, and it's a
Yeah.
bummer that was she nominated for Best supporting actress for the I thought oh, yeah.
It got 1 Academy Award nomination for, like, sound editing,
Mm,
which it should have gotten, but
yeah.
it should have gotten cinematography, it should have got
Visual
production
effects.
design, it should have got visual effects, like, it should have
Yeah,
had a lot more than it
yeah,
did, which is kinda crazy,
yeah.
but yeah, she is amazing. Just the whole movie, the way that she totally again, she gives her whole body in this performance, like, many times, she just the
Mhm.
way she's moving, the way she's acting, she's
Yeah.
amazing. I'm blown
W
away by her every time I watch it.
yeah, we get through her you know, how kind of horrific the lives of the precogs have
Yeah.
been,
Yeah.
and she and Tom Cruise gets to really see her as a human,
Yes.
and see what they've been doing to these people, but he takes her to Rufus, who's
Rufus
another
T. Riley.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's another pervy, futuristic computer nerd guy, who and he runs kind of a smarmy, gross, kind of VR world where he lets people live out fantasies in VR.
Yep.
But he
Mhm.
also has the tech that Tom Cruise needs to hook up to Agatha to find his Minority Report. And,
Yes.
you know, Colin Farrell figures out that they're going to Rufus because Rufus built the tech that he uses in
Yeah.
his office and all that. But it's here that we find out that Tom Cruise doesn't have a Minority
Yeah.
Report, that
I
you know,
yeah,
this is a
'cause
great
he's
twist
yeah, it
in the
really,
movie.
really is because
Yeah.
he's they're playing all this stuff and he's recording it, and then he jumps on top of her. Not like violently, but he gets right in her face and he's like, you know, "Where's my Minority Report?" He yells at her, "Do I even have one?" And I love her response is so she just says, "No." And
Yeah.
it really is a great little twist, like, what the heck? Like, if he doesn't have a Minority Report, like, what the heck is going on? Like,
But also
and
there's
then
something in her that knows, like, that still doesn't mean you have to do it. That
yeah,
still
yep,
like, the fact that you know it's going to
yeah,
happen means that is the plot hole in determinism, like, the fact
exactly.
that you've seen the video means that you can change it,
Yep,
like,
yeah,
uh,
and then, he's like then we see Anne Lively again, and this is when you're like, "Okay, what is going on with this?" Like, what's happening? So and then the cops show up, they have to run away, and this sequence is so much fun because it's
I
such a
do like
great
this. I enjoy
yeah,
this.
they're
She's
in a
doing, like, future prediction to help him get
yep.
away from the cops, yeah.
Yeah, they're running out and she's like, grab the, umbrella," and she's like, "Grab it," because he just walks right past it. He grabs it, and then they have to, like they do have to do a couple other things, and she's tells him to wait in this, like, very visible spot,
Mhm.
and then, like, these balloons come right by, and she tells him to wait, and then, like, that's when he sees, like, oh, yeah, she knows what she's talking about, like, she's
Yeah.
seeing the future,
But this is
and
also, like, Spielberg staging where it's like, the staging here doesn't really make sense for the cops to, like, all gather and then look over the railing and be like,
yeah, 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 yeah,
"Anybody got an idea?" And it's like,
yeah.
but it's like, it works for the movie.
Yep, it works for
It's
the movie.
nice,
Yep.
it's a nice, and it's good storytelling, and, yeah, I
Mhm.
like her telling him to throw the money on the ground for the bum, and again,
Yeah.
and this is, like, some Spielberg silliness that I'm okay with. I'm
Yeah.
alright with the bum going, "Well, can't you put it in my hand?" And
Yeah.
and then getting on his hands and knees, and then the cops trip over him because he's got on his
Yeah.
hands and knees trying to pick up the money. I'm okay with, like, some
Yes.
of the it's like that stuff to me is like, that's a funny little laugh that
Mhm.
I can go with and,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
And then they go outside, and his umbrella that he stole, he opens it, and no one can see him because it's raining.
yeah.
And it's a great little, like, end to the sequence. But then, because he did that, he sees the man in the sunglasses, which is a billboard, and he's like, "Well, I'm here." And she's this whole sequence again is
He
so
also looks at his watch and realizes he's 12 minutes away
yeah.
from and
Yep.
he's like, "Oh, wow, we're here. We're at the building where the murder takes place.
And
It happens in 12 minutes. Let's
yeah,
go in."
even as a viewer, like, I'm watching this going like, you're thinking like, "Well, don't do it," but you're like, "But I wanna know what happens, like, what is it? Like, what's going on?" Like, the first time you
Listen,
see it, you're like, Well, he's just gotta figure it out, right?" Like, you're almost wanting him to go to figure out why.
but also as a kid, the first time I saw this as a kid, I thought, "Just don't go in."
Yeah,
Like,
well, yeah, 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 yeah.
the obvious way to prove you're innocent is just don't like, that's the building where the murder takes place.
Yep.
Cool. Let's just get as far away from that building. We have 12 minutes. Let's get
Yeah.
as far away from that building as possible so that when time runs out, I can go, "See, I
Yeah. Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
and but and my
He's just
niece
drawn.
who's 13 said that. My niece goes, why wouldn't he just, like, go to a cabin in the woods for, like, 3 days and just
Yeah.
and I go, but that's what this movie's kind of talking about philosophically,
Yep.
is the nature of determinism, that still even in a world where agency exists and free will exists, the pull of determinism is still very much so at play, that we
Yeah.
live in, like, a
Yep.
largely deterministic universe that in his mind I love his rationale for it, that he tells Agatha, "Agatha, don't worry, I'm not gonna do
Yes.
it. I don't like,
Well,
I gotta figure out what happens, but, like, I'm not
yeah.
gonna kill the guy," you
I
know?
yeah, and I love the shot because he pulls her in and they're hugging, and this is again, like, 2 people probably wouldn't do this, but he is facing one way and
Mhm,
she is facing another, right? And they used it on the DVD covers and, like, posters
mhm,
and stuff. Like, he's like, "I'm not gonna do it. I just need to know what happened, like, how my life, turned around," and so they're looking in opposite ways because they want to go opposite directions, you
mhm,
know? Like, it's such
yeah.
a great visual cue that they are not on the same they're not looking in the same direction.
Well, and
But
I like all this. I like the little stylish, like, flip of the gun out onto the table, like, "How about
yeah,
now?" I
yeah,
think that's fun, but I also like that we've seen this image of this laughing woman with a pipe, but seeing
yeah.
her in real life I think it's, like, the first time we see clearly that she has a tattoo of a third eye on her forehead,
Oh, she
and
does, I've never seen that.
yeah, she's got a tattoo on her forehead of, like, a third eye, and that's another thing where it's like, okay, we're really,
Yep,
we're doing this whole thing with the 6 and the 9 on
yep,
the hotel
yep.
rooms, and, and, my little teenage brain too, I was like, "Nice, 6, 9."
You're very, Billy Madison, yeah, turn to page
Absolutely.
69. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but, yeah, I remember even as a kid thinking like, "Just don't go in there."
Yeah, don't
Like,
do it.
Agatha's telling you you can avoid the whole thing. But
Yeah.
that's what's interesting about this conversation philosophically is, like, he just he kinda can't stop himself.
No, he
And I
can't.
even
Yeah,
think that they're like, I think it's interesting that they bring up religion in the temple and stuff because
yeah,
for the longest time in philosophy, the only counter to the idea that we live in a purely deterministic world was God, was that we were
yeah, yeah,
given
yeah,
the agency by a
right,
divine creator.
right.
But it doesn't seem to track with just like a logical examination of the physical universe because
Yeah,
all things in the physical universe are cause and effect. It's like nothing happens
right,
without there is no effect without a cause.
right.
Everything is deterministic. And you can kind of see this guy sort of pulled by the
Mhm.
determinism of
Yes.
his fixed fate,
Yeah.
um, and I remember loving this twist as a kid being like, when he
Oh,
goes
yeah.
into this hotel room and finds all these photos and immediately thinking, "Oh, he's found the guy that
Yep,
took his son,"
yep.
and he didn't know that that's who it would be, but now and I love this is where, like, I'm like, "Dude, people forget what a world-class actor Tom Cruise is,"
Oh,
because and both he and Samantha Morton in this scene are bringing it. Like,
oh,
they
they're
are
incredible. This
yeah.
whole sequence is incredible. And, like, finding his son and the way that Tom Cruise's eyes are basically he almost becomes, like, fixated. Like, he kinda looks crazy.
Mhm,
Like, because then Leo Crow walks through the door, and he just starts wailing on him. And
mhm,
just, like, the way that they shoot it too is so great because 'cause you're focusing on Samantha Morton, who's just screaming,
mhm,
just like she can see it and it's there like with her, so it's obviously traumatic, but you can just see like him blurry in the background, just totally going to town on this guy. But
mhm.
like I remember seeing this thinking like, well, it's like you feel like Tom Cruise is not necessarily justified, but like he has been thinking about this forever. And he is really feels like he's genuinely unloading on a guy who abducted and killed his kid.
Yeah.
Right. Like it is very it's a great scene,
But when
acting
he's
wise and everything.
before Leo even comes in, when he says, "You were right. I am
Yeah.
going to kill this man. I have
Oh,
no I have no minority report. I have no," and he just
yep.
when he's like, "Wow, I'm gonna kill this guy as soon as,"
Yeah. Yep.
and I love how you see how difficult it is for him to make a
Yeah.
different decision in the moment, and
Oh, yeah.
him overcoming his urge to shoot Leo Crow in that
Yeah.
moment, and
W
even though it still winds up playing out, it passes
Yeah.
the deadline. His
It does.
watch goes off, and,
Yeah.
you
And
know
he's basically, like, barely able to speak.
Right.
He's like he's reading him his Miranda rights, and he's like, it's like he's so, it's such a hard decision. He's so worn out that like this is really hard for him. I remember this part when I saw this the first time, and I was just like, wow, what an ending. Like this is so amazing. Like it's just going to be that it's all wrong, like he chose because he knew. And I was like, this is a great way to end this movie. Like I never would have thought of that. And then Leo Crow is
Yeah,
like,
like we
you're not.
forget Anne Lively. That
Yeah,
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 like
yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Like you don't even think about it. And then he's like, "You're not going to
Mhm,
kill me." He's like, if you don't kill me, my family gets nothing, right?" And then this whole thing is like, you can again, great acting by both of them, because Tom Cruise is like, even Agatha's like, "What the heck is going on?" And
mhm.
like Tom Cruise's performance again, like, okay. And I want to ask you this. I wanted to ask you this. The murder, it all plays out kind of how it looks in the movie, but it doesn't look to me, in my interpretation of it, it looks like he misses Leo Crow and Leo just falls out and kills himself.
Yeah, it's different. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely but the words are the same. He still says "Goodbye, Crow,"
Yes.
and he says
He says
"Anderton
Anderton
Wait,"
Wait.
but it's not the same way on
No.
the Vision. It's we know it's so, like, even, like, my nephew last night, I think, said, like, "Oh, well, it still happened," and I was like, "But it happened differently because
Yes.
the watch went off, like, the timer went off, like, the moment when he was supposed to do it with malice. He was supposed to
Right.
pull the trigger, you know, but, the way it actually happens is it's close, but which I
Yes.
like. I really like
Yes.
that,
Yes.
and it kinda shows that, like, there's still sort of, like, something about determinism that, like, there's
Yeah.
something about fate that it's like they were still going to say those words, but it happens in
Yeah.
a slightly different arrangement. But now we know, okay, somebody set this up.
Yeah.
Somebody created a situation in which John Anderton would commit murder,
Yeah.
and we gotta go figure that out, and we still have
Yeah.
the Anne Lively thread that's open.
Yeah, and
Uh,
this the I can't remember if it's the exact next scene, but this is when Colin Farrell, when you start to get on his side, because he
mhm.
comes in and he is like, he's talking to everybody. He's like, have you has any is this your first, what did you do before pre-crime? And the guy's like, well, I was a treasury agent. He's like, well, I used to work murder. And he's like, do you know what this is called? He said, it's called an orgy of evidence. And he's like, do you know how many how many orgies I've had? He's like, none. He's like, this just doesn't happen, which I love that he's like, this has been staged. And you're like, at this point, I'm like, oh, he knows, like he's not the bad guy. So who is, and like, it's a great performance and it's a great little scene that they have. And then when is it? So Tom Cruise heads to his ex-wife's house.
Yeah, and Colin Farrell basically explains his findings to Lamar Burgess.
Yes,
He's like, "Let me show you what I found." Like, and he's really proud of himself because he basically cracks the
he
Anne
does.
Lively case.
He
He
does.
doesn't he doesn't crack who did it, but I really, I love this scene where he's explaining it. He's like,
Yeah.
he's like, "So let's say that you, pay somebody to commit a murder in a very specific way. You tell them to wear a certain outfit at a certain time of day. Pre-crime catches it, picks
Yeah.
it up, precogs pick it up, they come and pick the guy up, but then right then, you wear the exact same outfit, show up, do the murder in the exact same way. Technician sees it, thinks he's seeing an echo, he erases it.
Yeah.
Therefore,
Yeah.
and it's like, but I love when he goes, but it would have to be somebody with inside knowledge, somebody high up.
Yeah.
And I love this when Lamar goes like, "Hey, well, do you hear what I hear? Nothing. I don't
Yeah.
hear like
No clickety click
helicopter
of little
little
spiders. Yeah.
spiders." Yeah. That's because right now the precogs can't see a thing. Yeah.
And then he shoots
Yeah.
him.
Mhm.
And when that happened, my mind was blown.
Yeah.
Like the first time I saw it, my mind was so blown. I was like, "Oh my gosh." Like
Yeah.
it was crazy. And the funny thing about this, like I love how this scene plays out because he gets shot and then I mean, this is a really saturated red, which I
Mhm.
love because you see the hole in his chest and then the blood just like starts pooling on his shirt, on his very very white shirt, and it is like really really red. I really, I mean, I don't want to say I like his death, but I mean it's filmed so well. And then you see the smoking gun, which is again just a
So
great like
noir.
noir shot. Yeah.
Mhm.
And then he goes and he shoots him again. This is the thing. I had no idea. The first time I saw this, I had no idea. I saw this with my dad. Like I think the second time I saw it with my dad, and I was like, "Could you believe it? Like, did you?" I had no idea. He's like, "Well, yeah, I knew it was Max von Sydow." And I was like, "How would you know that? How would you know that?" He's like, "Well, he's always the bad guy." And I was like,
Yeah.
seriously? Like, I
Yeah,
didn't know that.
I think we as kids didn't realize that, like, that's
No,
also a
no.
trope in film noir and, like, in detective movies is, like, if you bring in it's kinda like, like, I watched, like, The Accountant recently, and it's like,
Yeah.
they've just got John Lithgow in there playing, like, this
Yeah.
CEO
Yeah.
character, and it's like, you're not bringing in John Lithgow to
To
just
do
play
nothing.
yeah,
Yeah.
like, you're not he's not just playing like like, he's there for a reason, and it's because
Yeah. Yeah.
he's the it's like, usually you can as you get older, you can sort of identify, it's like, they wouldn't just have Max von Sydow there to just sort of be like a mentor character. Like if
Yeah.
there's a secret bad guy that we're not seeing, it's probably a guy who's been in the movie the whole time, like
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah, it's yeah.
yeah,
And, like, there are actors now that it's like, "Oh, yeah, well, of course it was gonna be that guy." Like, we
yeah.
it just goes with movie making, but it when I was young, it got me because I had no idea.
What always kind of shocked me in this movie is so Tom Cruise goes to his ex-wife's place.
Yeah, yeah.
They do have this really emotional scene with Samantha Morton, which also great moment here
Yes.
from Steven Spielberg, and it scared the crap out of me when I was a kid, and I watched my niece and nephew both jump when Samantha Morton leans forward to Tom Cruise and goes, "I'm sorry, John, but you're gonna have to run again."
Yeah.
And he goes, "What?" And then she goes, "Run!" And she screams, and like when that happened in the theater, I was like, "Oh," because she's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
scary when she
Well,
does
and you
that.
can see the vein in her neck. She is
Yeah.
really screaming. It's great.
Yeah,
Great scene.
but also it's very disturbing when he gets haloed. Like
It is.
it's
It is.
like what we don't know much about what it's like to be
No,
haloed, but the way that they depict it visually in the movie, it just
I love
looks
it.
terrifying.
Well,
It
yeah, and,
just
like,
yeah,
they put the halo on, they show it from the back, and it, like, pops down, and then the camera kinda, like, pops down, and his eyes open, and he just, like he falls. Like, the camera work in this, again, is, like, really subtle, but it's very effective,
mhm.
because the way that the camera's moving with the halo, and then his head is falling, and the camera kinda falls with him, and, it's I love that we don't know exactly what happens because your mind is the worst. It creates whatever the worst thing is that you could think of, you know?
Right, right.
And then, okay, this is kind of the, I wanna get back to this ending because
Yeah.
he goes we'll come back to it in a minute, but he goes into the pod, and then, his
T
wife
Tim Blake Nelson's like, "Ooh,
yeah,
I
he's
got
like
you now,
yeah,
chief."
he's like, "I got you now." Yeah, he's like, "You're
Yeah.
part of my flock, John." And,
Yeah.
he, like and then, his ex-wife and then Lamar Burgess are talking, and he gives it up, like, "Oh, I'll see if anyone, has drowned by the name of, Anne Lively," and his ex-wife's like, "Well, I never said she drowned," so she knows.
I love
Sh
this moment when
Yeah,
he moves the
he moves
chair
the
and just
chair.
steps
Yeah,
right into her. I love
yeah.
that moment. Yeah.
I love that too, and he's like, "We'll talk about this later," and then she uses Tom Cruise's original eyes to get into the place, and she breaks him out, and then they have,
Again,
um
if his security clearance wasn't taken
yeah,
revoked
yeah.
initially, it definitely is
Why did
now.
they not do it
It
anymore?
was yeah.
We can't do it. Anyway,
Yeah.
but yeah, they have this whole sequence. So pre-crime is going to go national, and everybody's praising, Lamar Burgess and all that he's done. And as they're in the ceremony, they give him a gun, which signifies peace in the Civil War times. And then he gets a call from Tom Cruise, and he's like, he walks him through this. This whole sequence is so well shot.
Mhm.
I have to say, the ending in this movie, if there's a weakness, it's definitely this ending, um, because it's not as, like, exciting, but
Sure.
it's very thematically very appropriate,
It's
and that's
very film noir.
yes, it is very film noir,
Yeah.
and that's why I really like it. But I see it is definitely not the same as the rest of the movie because it's not as exciting. But also, it's a really old guy who's going to go up against Tom Cruise.
Yeah, they're
What are
not
you
gonna
going to do? Like,
fight.
yeah, like, and that's
Yeah.
why I like it because they're having a conversation, and
Mhm.
he's like, and again, Tom Cruise is just giving everything in his performance. He's yelling, he's like, don't ever say his name, and he's yelling
Mhm.
at it. And he's like, "You used my dead son to frame me," and the precogs are saying it while they're saying it, and there's a murder that's going to happen, and the
Yeah.
the victim is John Anderton, and the perpetrator is Lamar Burgess, and it's like everything is saying that Lamar is going to kill Tom Cruise, right?
Mhm.
Like Lamar is going to kill John Anderton, And then it comes down to the choice. They're in the situation, and he's like, "Okay, you know your future. You can change it." Like, and he's like, "What are you gonna do?" He basically leaves it up to him, which is a bold move. He's got a gun, like, and he knows he's going to kill him. But again, so if Lamar, the nice thing about Lamar is he is committed 2 murders. He's had to fake previsions or do things to commit 2 murders just to keep this thing alive. And now it's down to him to decide if he's going to redeem himself by killing himself or turning him in and proving that pre-crime is there's doubt, there's fraud,
Mm.
right? And he kills himself, kind of almost as a penance for what he's done, and it's done really, really well because it's intense. You don't know what's going to happen. And he's turned the gun on himself, Lamar has, and he shot himself in the stomach and he dies. But he kind of brings down pre-crime, and it feels so thematically fitting for the determinism and everything, right? Like, this is the holes that it's poking in. But how do you feel about this ending?
No, it's great. It's exactly what it should be, where he's telling Lamar, "You know, you can see that they're coming to get you. So
Yeah.
obviously, you and I both know that you're about to kill me right now,
Mhm.
which means since you know that, you don't have to pull that trigger. You
Yeah.
can do something different. But if you do something different, it means pre-crime doesn't work. It's over. If you kill me, it means that pre-crime works, and but
You're gonna go to jail.
you're
Yeah,
gonna be in a halo, So like, what do But I that's it's also like I think that again, it's like we're looking at the wrong solutions with our technology and with our
yeah,
with our systems because with technology where you could look into the future, what you could do with a Howard Marks or someone like that is get to them and say, listen, we have a if let's say it's an
yep,
AI that we develop that's powerful enough that it can give
yeah,
us
yeah,
future projections. It can look into the future and you go to someone, you go, we got this projection that in a week you're going to kill this person. And we don't want to put you in a torture facility for the rest of
right,
your life, but
right,
let's actually keep you away from that person. Let's go put you somewhere else and let's work with you on like what's going
mhm,
on. What's going on? Let's try to help you. What's happening in your life right now that's leading you to this, and let's see if we can
yeah,
change your tram lines. Let's see if we can
yeah,
change, your
yeah,
future. And I think
yeah,
that like there's a better outcome for a lot of these guys who like they didn't actually kill anybody. And Colin
yeah,
Farrell says it at the beginning of the movie. He's like, let's not kid ourselves. You're arresting people who haven't committed any crimes. He's like,
yeah,
but they were going to. It's like, but they haven't. They
yeah,
haven't
yeah,
actually. And
yeah,
there's a problem there because
yeah,
even if you can see they were going to, it's like, well, then figure out a way to deal with them in a more humane way
right,
because
right,
you stopped them. You changed the future. You stopped them from hurting anybody.
yeah,
How can you help them now? You just put them in a
yeah,
place where you
yeah,
put them in a halo and you just
yeah,
put them in in a dungeon somewhere. It's like,
yeah,
but I do think this is a very thematically fitting ending
yeah,
to this film for sure.
yeah, and I mean, then pre-crime is just totally wiped out,
Yep.
and there's a little voiceover, and then Tom Cruise is back together with his ex-wife, and she
Mhm.
is pregnant, and it all ends very happily. And so this is the thing I wanna get back to.
Yeah.
So Tom Cruise gets haloed. He gets put in by Tim Blake Nelson. And Tim Blake Nelson is like, they say that all your your wildest dreams come through. Like it's quite a rush, or whatever. And so there's a theory online that the end of this movie is what John Anderton experiences
Mm,
when he puts the halo on and
sure.
when he gets it. And I just have you heard that theory?
It makes perfect sense. I don't know
Yeah,
why they'd have that line in there if that's not at least a possibility
right.
that
And
John Anderton is imagining
yeah,
justice being
yeah.
done. Yeah.
Like, and his mind is putting it all together of who could have done it, and everything,
It,
and so it didn't really happen. But I don't I love that theory, but I don't know how to feel about it. Like, is that the ending that I want to believe happened, or do I want to believe that it actually happened in
I'll
the way
tell
that it
you,
did?
when I think about the possibility of this movie actually telling us in its last moment that we're actually just witnessing a vision that
Yeah,
Tom
like a
Cruise is,
fever dream. Yeah,
it does feel like it fits with the tone
yeah,
of what Philip K. Dick has created. That it's just like, no, in this world, there's not justice.
yeah,
There's not
yeah,
that, there's just the dream of justice, the
yeah,
imagined possibility of justice, but
yeah,
not real justice. And you
Yeah.
know.
And I
But
think sorry, go ahead.
but I like the ending of this movie.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I like it too. And
Mhm.
I think after thinking about it, because I remember that theory as well, and after thinking about it kind of over this week that I've watched it, I think whatever makes you think whatever makes you like the movie better, go with that ending. Because
Sure.
it can be either one. And I actually either way, I really like it. Whether it really did happen or if it's just his vision that he had when he goes into, the jail. They both work well thematically in my mind. So
Yep.
anyway, okay, cool. Should we get to scores?
Yeah, we shall. So, okay, if this is your first time watching our show, we give scores for every movie on a scale of 10, 10 being the best, 1 being the worst. We do a technical rating for how well we think the film was constructed technically, just the craft, the nuts and bolts. We give a score for the ending. How well did the movie stick the landing? We give a score for rewatchability, a score for cultural significance and impact, and a score for just our subjective rating for the film. So, Kramer, what is your technical rating for Minority Report?
My technical rating is a 10. I love the way this movie looks. I love the way how everybody is in top form. Spielberg is like this. Honestly, okay, he made this and Catch Me If You Can at the same time, and he also made Artificial Intelligence like the year before or something.
He loves making 2 movies at once.
He does. He
Yeah.
likes to go between so that creatively he can kind of, which I think is a great. It's actually a great idea. Um, only he can really do it, I guess. But this movie and this movie and Catch Me If You Can, I feel like are Spielberg's last. I don't want to say last great movies because he's still a great filmmaker. Every film he makes is done really really well. But this is like the end of his peak, I feel like. Again, that sounds bad too. That sounds worse than I want it to sound, but he's
No, I
tried different things since these movies. And he's
yeah,
he's done things in a different way that has made him it's what he wants to do, which is great for him, but he's not as much as his blockbuster stealth.
yeah.
Like these are like his two movies that like this is like top Spielberg. This Catch Me If You Can, everything before this, there's amazing stuff after it. But this is like top Spielberg for me. So he's on his top form. I think everybody else is in their top form. So I gave it a 10.
Crazy enough, I gave this movie an 8.5 where
Okay.
I agree with everything you just said. I think that
Yeah.
it's everyone's in top form. I think Tom Cruise is crushing it. I think Samantha Morton's crushing it. I think that Colin Farrell's crushing it. I think Steven Spielberg is mostly crushing it. I actually
Yeah.
docked
Yeah.
the points because I think that he takes big swings here, like
Mhm.
with the style of the cinematography. It's
Yeah.
very clearly an intentional choice, and I think it mostly works. And I think like my personal preference is like I think that the desired effect you were going for could have been more satisfyingly achieved if you dialed back the intensity of the effect being put on the film grain
Yeah. Yeah.
by
Yeah.
like 10%.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on top of that, the Spielberg isms in the making
Yeah.
it funness of it all in some of the action sequences. Sometimes I'm fine with it, and if there are those few moments where it's just like and there's a few too many of those where I'm like, I just don't know that it belongs in this movie."
Right.
I think that's
Right.
from
Totally.
a different movie, but other than that, it's pretty tight. It's a pretty
It
airtight
is.
film, and so,
Yeah.
I could even bump it up to a 9 maybe, but that's where I'm at. How about for the
That's
ending?
good. The ending, the ending, I gave a 9.5. Thematically, it fits. It definitely isn't as exciting, but and you can go either way, like we talked about. Whichever, if whether it's his dream or the reality, pick one.
Yeah. I give the ending of this movie a 9. I think all the same exact things. I think that it fits thematically. Maybe it is a little bit of like a de-escalation. The Leo Crow scene is so high in intensity, and maybe
Yeah.
we kind of just like slide down into something that does. But the first time you watch it, it hits hard,
Oh yeah.
and it still hits. It still is a very
Yeah.
satisfying uh, ending. How
Well,
about
and
rewatch?
what did sorry to cut you off a little bit.
No, yeah.
What did your niece and nephew think? What was kind of their call after watching it? Did they like it?
I don't know. We had a nice conversation afterward, but they definitely weren't like, "Whoa, that was,"
Mm,
they had questions about different things, but they weren't like, "Wow, that was amazing."
okay.
Uh, my brother did though. My brother was like, "That's gotta be one of his best movies. It's gotta be like one of his," and I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it probably is in the top 10,
Yeah.
best
Oh yeah.
Spielberg films,"
Yeah.
you
Has
know?
Anthony has seen it before though, right?
Oh, yeah.
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 Okay.
How about rewatchability for you?
Rewatchability, I gave a 10. I love rewatching this movie. Like, you can see so much stuff and you find out more and you can pick out more details, especially the philosophical side of this movie makes you think about things in a great way. It makes you question things and theories and stuff in a good way.
Yeah, I gave it a 9, because to this day, the things that bothered me the first time I watched it are still there, and,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
and they don't get, like, they don't go down easier for me on repeat
Yeah. Yeah.
viewings, like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
still like, every single time I'm like, "Nah, that thing still kinda bugs me,"
Yep.
like, just
Yep.
like the Peter Stormare thing, I'm just like, "I'm not sure why this scene is so pointed," and I'm trying to figure it out,
Yeah.
and I'm like,
Yeah.
"You're really doing a thing where you're just trying to, like, trick me," and,
Yeah. Yeah.
but, that's remember, I'm still at a 9. I'm 1
Yeah.
point
Yeah.
under
Yeah. Yeah. No,
the
that's great.
highest score. I still really enjoy watching this movie, and I
Yeah.
still
That's great.
really, really enjoy this movie and think it's great.
Yeah.
And I will say that like, the philosophical question, that's another thing where I'm like, I almost want my personal taste, I want the movie to go harder in that direction,
Yeah.
and
I
this
can see
I
that.
I
Yeah.
kept thinking, like, who would crush Minority Report in 2025 is Denis Villeneuve. Like, Denis
Oh,
would,
yeah.
would
Yeah.
do such an amazing, and it's kind of like a thing like that where I'm like, why can't somebody else take it? Even though the movie exists and it's great, it's just based on an existing short story, like by Philip K.
Mhm.
Dick. It's like
Yeah.
somebody else take a crack. Like I would watch Denis Villeneuve's Minority Report. I'd watch
Yeah.
that.
That would be
But
very interesting to see for sure. Yeah.
yeah, cultural impact and significance.
Cultural impact, and this is a hard one. I gave it I gave it a 9. No, I gotta give it an 8 because it's I gave it an 8 because I still think it has been impactful, but it has seemed to have gone a little bit under the radar more recently. But this is a movie that is great, a great Spielberg film. It really is probably one of his best. I
Mhm.
really do think it is. It's up there, and I think it has inspired a lot of people. But I think it's kind of it's gone a little unnoticed as of late.
Yeah, I gave it an 8 as well. I think in its first, like, 10 years,
Yeah,
Minority Report was very influential,
yeah,
and it has lost a little bit of steam and as far as its staying power. Like I said, it's like, it's kinda one of those movies that you go like, "Oh, yeah, because for a while, it was, like, a banger,
yeah,
I
yeah,
and I do think that a lot of the way that Apple developed their tech with, like, iPads and stuff was
yeah,
like, "We wanna give you the Minority Report experience,"
yeah,
for better or worse. So there
yeah.
definitely is a cultural impact and influence there. What's your subjective score for this?
My subjective score is a 10. This is definitely one of my favorite films. Just very influential. I love it. Love the score. Love the everything about it.
Yeah.
it's very nostalgic to me. And, I saw it whenever 14, 15, whatever we were. It blew me away. And I still get that feeling every time I see it.
Yeah,
So,
the stuff that works in this movie absolutely still works, and it works
yeah.
every time.
Yeah.
And so I give this movie a 9. It's just, yeah, it's a great one. It's a really solid Tom Cruise performance. We get lots of good
Yeah.
running from
Yeah.
Tom Cruise in this movie, and we get a really solid performance too. Lots of great emotion, and
Hmm.
it's just everything that works in this movie really really works.
Yeah.
So okay, next we're continuing our Tom Cruise a-thon,
Yeah.
going into Mission Impossible: The Last Reckoning, and we are watching Mission Impossible 3, the J.J. Abrams Mission Impossible,
Yeah.
the Philip Seymour Hoffman Mission Impossible.
Yeah.
So if you want to watch
Love that
along
one.
with us, watch Mission Impossible 3, and we'll be talking about that next week. And yeah, we'll see you then.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Okay.
Bye bye.